Welcome everyone to the Mindfulness broadcast. Happy Friday. My name is Theo, for anyone who doesn't know me. Today I wanted to talk about something that is commonly on our minds this time of year, which is New Year's resolutions, and kind of unpack some of the ways that New Year's resolutions fail to serve us and how we might address those things, and also harness our mindfulness practice in order to really practice being who it is that we want to be in the world, kind of using our mindfulness and our awareness proactively to create more traction and progress in our lives. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we are going to talk about what we can think of as the resolution trap. And this comes, just to be clear, we're big fans of Dr. Rick Hanson's work, and this comes from his work. And so I really love his YouTube channel. I highly recommend his YouTube channel to folks. So when we set New Year's resolutions, I would imagine some of you are familiar with this process. What we're usually up to is we're creating a structure that has have, which then leads to do, which then leads to be. And it turns out that this is actually kind of backwards. So what we're up to is we're setting a goal like, okay, I want to lose X amount of pounds, or I want to read X amount of books, or whatever the thing is for you. I want to run a marathon. I want to the thing, right? So that's the have. And then the have is supposed to motivate us to do something in order to get to that destination of having, which will then, in our mind's eye, with our expectation, is that we will have a state of being as a result of these things. So once I have a better body, once I've gotten myself down to my target weight, I'll be able to do more activities, and then I'll be happier. So the reason that this is backwards is because what we're up to is actually we're dealing often with a lot of shoulds. Like, we're not always investigating where these motivations come from, and the shoulds can kind of sneak in. And then the other thing that we're up to oftentimes is we're putting conditions on our worth. And conditions of worth is a framework that came out of Carl Rogers, kind of humanistic psychology. And so what I'm actually saying is that until I reach this goal, I'm not going to be feeling very good about myself. It's only through getting to that destination that I'll feel okay. Right, and we can see how that can become a trap, right? So if I'm placing a precondition on my sense of well-being, on my sense of agency, then between now and whenever that happens, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be a tough road, and oftentimes that'll be a real opportunity for an inner critic, self-loathing. Those kinds of things start to come up, and we get frustrated. I get frustrated easily, and it's pretty easy to get off track. So the idea that we want to start to embrace here is to reverse engineer this. What we want to do is we want to start with the be. And when we start with the be, we will then have an easier time with the do, which then makes it a lot easier to get to the have, to that destination of whatever it is we're aiming for. And also to just hold this a little more lightly, right? Because it turns out that we don't always have that much control over outcomes. What we do have control over is deciding how we want to frame it, what we are doing through, and this is going to become important, I'll talk about this a little more in a second, through values and self-concept. So values and self-concept turn out to drive our behavior much more effectively than having these outcomes kind of dangling out there like the proverbial carrot. So what we really want to do is we want to start with this state of being, and Hanson refers to this as like a stance or an intrinsic value, and allow that to be rewarding in and of itself, and then also to allow even the small behavioral shifts, even like 5 minutes of a behavior that we're excited about lining up with these values and these new concepts of self, having that be rewarding in and of itself, and having the destination be a little bit, like I said, held a little bit more lightly, so that we can start to make more momentum towards a direction, and build up that momentum over time, and allow it to lead to what it will. So what we're up to again is, if we can start with our values and identity, that's the B, right? The behaviors flow naturally from our values and identity. So that's the do. And the outcomes come out of our behaviors. So I hope that's making sense to folks. So again, most people are making resolutions about outcomes or behaviors, but ignore the values or their self-concept, their identity. So it turns out, as an example, if I want to be a really good dancer, then maybe initially I have this goal of like being in a salsa competition or something like that, right? But it turns out that if I just start thinking of myself as a dancer, bringing a value of like dancing and moving my body as core to who I am, seeing myself as that, the behaviors actually start to sprout out of that, right? But oftentimes, again, what we're doing is we're saying, I don't get to be a dancer until I get to be in that salsa competition. So here's a few more things I wanted to mention before we get into a little exercise. It can be helpful to forget about year-long targets. We have this mistaken idea that it's only on January 1st that we get to kind of renew our sense of ourselves, or our sense of what direction we want to be going in. And that's actually kind of a false idea. And we can start to play with things like monthly or weekly process goals. And then if we just make small wins the threshold by which we can measure how our identity and how our values are showing up in our lives, just 5 minutes of dancing in my living room, for example, we need to count those as wins. We need to set the bar really low so that we can kind of start to build those habits into our lives. And it's always kind of proven that it's more important to get the habit established through easy wins and then build it up over time than to make it this long-term kind of big scary thing. And then the fresh start effect. So I don't know if you have this feeling, but I often have the feeling like, oh, it's January 1st, I get to renew my life, right? But it turns out we don't have to wait for January 1st to come around. We can do it anytime we want. So we can treat every week, every Monday, or even every Sunday night when we start to plan our week, we can treat it as a fresh start. So I hope those ideas are useful in kind of jarring how you think about what's going on in mid-January, which is often the time where we start to feel like, oh my God, am I really going to be able to do this? So what I want to do now is I want to lead you in a brief exercise where we will be able to just kind of touch into what it is that we want and how we can be in that state now and have that state lead us to the behaviors that we want to really encourage in ourselves. So I want you to just drop in, allow yourself to settle in your body and space. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. Just take a breath or two into the belly. And allow the release to be long and complete. Deep breath into the belly. All the way out. And then let the breath be natural. Join the breath in its rhythm. And then I want you to ask yourself a question and try to just allow it to surface naturally. Allow the answer just to come from the space that you've been able to create just by getting in touch with the breath. What do I want my life to be about this year? And see if you can just get in touch with a single word. It could be adventure, it could be ease, it could be health, spaciousness. Whatever word comes up for you, just allow it to show up. And then notice as you hold that word in your mind, what it feels like to be with that word in your physical body right now. Where can you sense it? And in sensing it, can you embrace it as a part of how you see yourself? So that you are in that state right now, not at some future point. And then I'm going to see if it would be helpful to imagine what that word might look like in some small future action. If your word is ease, what does 5 minutes of ease look like for you? What small activity can you imagine doing that helps that identity show up in the world? So as vividly as you can, picture that. See yourself and feel yourself as that person in this moment. Use the beauty and the power of your conscious mind to occupy that space now. And trust that that allows you the ability to make small, consistent shifts in your behavior over time. And when you're ready, I'm going to invite you to kind of gently come back into the space. And if it's helpful, you can jot down what it is that you noticed, what activity came to mind, what the word was, and just nudge yourself a teeny bit into one thing that you can do today to make that a reality for yourself.